This is KGW News at Sunrise.
Good morning. Thanks for getting up with us on this Sunday. I'm Tim Gordon.
And I'm Christelle Kumwe. This morning on Sunrise, Portland police take on rising gun violence with a boost in resources. What we're seeing on the streets this weekend.
Plus, more and more companies desperate to find employees. The impact this is having across the Northwest. But before we get to all that, let's check in with Chris McGinnis for a quick look at the forecast. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, guys. Dry start, wet finish. That's pretty much the summary for our Sunday. Right now, a live look from our Wells Fargo sky camera. We are, well, it's still dark. It's early out there. Sunrise is still a good 90 minutes away or so. It's also not as cold this morning as it has been over the last couple of mornings. Remember, we were waking up to temperatures that were in the lower 20s yesterday in Hillsborough. This morning, it's 33. It's 38 last check at PDX. And the big picture across the state, still cold in eastern Oregon, of course, with single-digit temperatures right now in Baker City and Burns, Pendleton waking up to 26. All right, big picture here across the region. Cloud cover streaming in as expected. Rain offshore. That rain will get here later today. Our morning here in the Rose City is dry. We'll be dry through lunchtime, but it's possible that we squeeze out a few sprinkles along the North Oregon coast before lunchtime. I think the rain moves in, though, sometime between about 2:30 and 4 here in the metro area. It's going to be a breezy and wet finish to our Sunday. Your full forecast and look ahead to next week in just a few minutes. Tim?
All right, Chris, thank you. Well, we start with a developing situation in Clark County. A sheriff's deputy shot and killed a person. This all started in the Orchards area with an armed robbery at a convenience store. Deputies chased the suspect in cars into the battleground area where the suspect then took off on foot. Now, details are quite scarce right now, but investigators say the suspect somehow made contact with a homeowner up there. When deputies arrived, one of them fired their gun. Now, we don't know who was hit. We've asked if it was the suspect or the homeowner and have not gotten an answer. But we do know the person that was hit died at the scene. The Lower Columbia Major Crimes Team is now leading the investigation.
Down here in Portland, homicide detectives have been in the Hazelwood neighborhood all night. A man is dead, and detectives say it looks like someone shot him. Officers responded to a shots fired call along Southeast Stark just before 2 a.m. They found a victim near the intersection of Southeast 97th and Oak. If you have any information about this case, you're asked to call Portland Police. Less than a month into the new year, and Portland's rising gun violence hasn't quit. More and more neighbors are angry. More and more families are grieving.
So now, police are putting more officers on the street this weekend. KGW's Art Edwards shows us what this effort looks like.
The problem is not going away. Gun violence is, well, I would say, the biggest public safety issue that we have here in the city of Portland right now.
As of Saturday afternoon, Portland police say they have responded to 92 shootings so far this year. More than 24 people have been injured, and 7 have died as a result of gun violence. That includes a man who was shot and killed early Friday morning in Old Town.
The numbers are staggering. They are disappointing. But, you know, they're also not entirely unexpected because we knew that this was kind of where we were going over the course of most of last year.
As a result of the shootings over the last few days, police are putting more resources in the street, some of them from the newly established Focused Intervention Team, and some from the Enhanced Community Safety Team.
For the first time, we're combining these two teams together in an effort to have high visibility patrol as well as response to shootings.
The officers are working overtime this weekend, so the added resources are not here for the long term.
It's not something we can sustain. Our staffing issues are well known. You know, we've been very open with our community about our limitations right now because of our staffing. That's going to continue.
Raymond Lusk has lived in the Cully neighborhood in Northeast Portland for the last 4 years. Just a few nights ago, the gun violence came within blocks of his home.
We heard some what sounded like gunshots, and we didn't really know what was going on. We heard sirens a little later, and then later on we learned that there had been a shooting at the 7-Eleven, and a couple dozen casings were recovered.
No one was injured, but police recovered this gun not far from the shooting and made an arrest in the case. These kind of incidents spark a strong emotion.
Fear. I mean, stray bullets come through houses and kill people, and we've had a lot of buildings that are shot up in this town, and it appears to be getting worse every month.
This coming week, Portland Police Chief Chuck Lavelle will present a report to the City Council. It will be about the Bureau's relationship with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Joint Terrorist Task Force. The annual report is a requirement from a 2019 City Council resolution. It details the frequency of requested assignments and referrals between the agencies. The report was set for Wednesday of last week, but it is now delayed until this coming Tuesday. Earlier this week, several organizations, including the ACLU, hosted a forum to share concerns about PPB's involvement with the Joint Task Force.
Portland police officers working as JTT officers may be engaged in actions that are in direct conflict with this law. The most direct way to prevent civil rights abuses and potential state law violations is for the city to prohibit Portland Police Bureau officers from participating with the JTTF. However, to the extent that the Bureau continues to have engagement with the JTTF, it is critical for the city to create meaningful oversight and transparency.
Now, here's a quick rundown of the information that will be submitted next week. The FBI special agent in charge did not request PPB officers for criminal investigations in 2021. They did refer, however, one case to Portland police involving a 14-year-old making bomb threats to a school. That ended up not being credible. Portland police referred 7 cases to the FBI. Turning now to the pandemic, the U.S. has surpassed 74 million COVID cases, and the milestone comes as millions of home tests arrive in the mail across the country. An NBC News tally confirms more than 74 million cases in the U.S. since the start of the pandemic and more than 886,000 deaths. The case count reached 73 million 3 days ago, which is a slowdown. That also is reflected right here in Oregon. Multnomah County Health says numbers were down by 23% since January 16th, and statewide new cases are also flat for the last 7 days.
Well, 2021 ended with more than 100,000 job openings in Oregon. We're getting an inside look at the challenge to hire workers these days during the Great Resignation. Papa Murphy's is a pizza chain based in Vancouver. It has about 1,300 stores with 55 in the Portland, Vancouver area. Those stores have about 100 job openings right now.
So a lot of our stores in the market have seen reduced hours because they don't have people that are willing to come in and work the really busy shift.
The biggest constraint in the economy right now is labor. It's harder to find workers today than it was, 2-3 years ago.
Well, some Papa Murphy's franchises are offering hiring and referral bonuses to get people to apply. Well, we have talked a lot about job shortages because of COVID, but some professions were shorthanded way before the pandemic. A recent report by the American Bar Association shows Oregon desperately needs more public defenders. Devin Haskins looks into how bad this problem really is.
It's a problem the state has known about for years and has tried in the past to get funding for. Oregon's public defense system is a state agency that contracts with nonprofits and attorneys with each county. Those needing their help aren't able to hire an attorney of their own because they simply can't afford one.
The report was requested and funded by the legislature and was released on Friday. It shows the state's public defense system is overworked and severely understaffed. Currently, there are 592 full-time public defenders, and at the current levels, an attorney would need to work 26 hours a day to provide effective assistance. The report says Oregon would need to hire almost 1,300 more public defenders to cut down on the workload. The Oregon Public Defense System's executive director says it'll take more money and time to fix the problem, and he says it's only going to get worse before it gets better as attorneys and investigators leave because of burnout and low pay.
So that's creating a downward spiral where they're leaving and we keep going downward. And what we need to do is reverse that spiral so we can increase the pay, keep folks in the system, attract new folks into the system so that we can reduce the workload, and that'll create an upward spiral.
Christine Breton is a public defender from Multnomah Defenders Incorporated and says this report is heartbreaking but also vindicating. She says it proves to the state just how overworked and understaffed the profession is.
And as you pick up more and more cases, it becomes harder and harder to resolve any cases because the more clients you have, the harder it is to spend a lot of time on any one case. And so it becomes a lot of trying to manage so many cases that it slows down all of your cases from resolving, and you're picking up more cases as this happens, and it just kind of keeps on continuing.
The state has tried to get the department funding in the past. Most recently, in 2019, the legislature passed emergency funding that would have sent $20 million to the agency. But then the pandemic happened, and that money was pulled back as the state started cutting back on spending. I'm Devin Haskins, KGW News.
Well, an Oregon tribe wants to build a new casino off I-5 near Salem.
But another tribe says this isn't a good idea. We'll hear from both sides coming up in just 2 minutes.